Okay, I hope everyone can hear having like a little bit of sound problems, but we're gonna go ahead and proceed. This is week 3 of Let Down Your Cells. We're talking about the compass this week. Let me get everybody started on the presentation here. Give me a moment to share my screen. Can everybody see? Okay, okay. All right. So last week we checked in on the hull, which is our vessel, right? So personal identity, kind of to figure out where we are in present time, how we're feeling about ourselves. Do we feel like life stresses are getting to us, having any type of effect on how we're moving about in life? Just the general feel about our quote unquote ship, right? If we felt there was any leaks, if we felt that we were sailing along just fine. So this week we're going to take a look at our compass and how to steer our lives by our true north. Okay. So we're aiming to navigate with intention. Okay. So being aware of where we're going and the decisions we're making that align with where we're going and how we live. So instead of feeling like, well, whatever's going in life, the weather conditions, right, is tossing us about and in control of shaping our direction, we're just going to land anywhere. It's more about navigating and using our skills in those storms to continue on our course. Okay. The one that we've chosen. The one that we're aligned with. Okay. So we're not letting life's conditions shape our direction in life. We're shaping our direction in life. So this week is about reconnecting with the values and the vision that helps us make aligned decisions. Okay. Even when the waves get a little rough out there. So to ground us in the space, let me start my timer. To ground us in the space, let's just take some deep breaths together. We're going to do 3 rounds. We'll inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 2, and then exhale for a count of 4. Okay, and we'll do 3 rounds. If you're comfortable with closing your eyes, on the inhale, you're going to draw air in through your nostrils. Okay, and then on the exhale, you're going to actually let that air out through your lips like you're blowing out a candle. All right. And as you exhale, I want you to visualize um, a fear. So, right now in your mind, think of a fear you have: fear of succeeding, fear of change, uh, putting yourself out there. I don't know, fear of heights, any type of fear that you have that you think it's prominent in your life and kind of shaping your direction. I want you to think about that fear. And as you exhale, I want you to visualize your breath pushing that fear farther and farther away from you, okay, on each exhale. So we're going to go ahead and ground into the space together. I'll have you inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, exhale, 3, 2, 1. That's round 1. And I'll have you inhale, 3, 2, 1, hold, 1, exhale, 3, 2, 1. That's round 2. And we're going to inhale, hold, exhale, 3, 2, 1. All right. So today's discussion is about values, vision, and direction. What are the principles that are keeping us aligned? Um, we're going to have an activity about identifying our core values and kind of discuss that a bit. And the goal is to reconnect to intention and really start giving thought to that. So the compass, in our sailboat metaphor, the compass represents our values or our intuition and life direction. Okay. Um, it's that internal knowing that tells us, come on, you're going this way, you're going the right way, you're doing well, you know? So even when the destination doesn't seem clear at times, our compass is what helps us course correct and navigate based on what really matters to us. not what other people are expecting from us, and not what's trending online, okay, but what's actually authentic and true for us. Now, we talk about motivation all the time. We have Motivation Monday, we're posting memes and all those things, right? But sometimes we're not honest about motivation because it can fizzle out at any time and for various reasons even, right? Um, and it happens. Sometimes it's going well on our journey, sometimes it's not. But um, for example, maybe you worked out, right? And you worked out today, you had a really good workout, you're pumped up, you're like, yes, I can do this, and you're motivated to do the same thing tomorrow. Okay. But when you wake up tomorrow, maybe there's some pain that's going to be associated with the workout you had today. Maybe your day's really busy, you had a busy schedule. Maybe something comes up that's unpleasant, right? Something that was frustrating or stressful. And so then it makes it easier to say, you know what, I did work out yesterday, which would be today, right? I did work out yesterday. I could take a break today and then start again tomorrow. What is motivating you to keep that commitment of your body movement every day, even when those undesirable things are creeping up in your day, right? Not that you should never take a break, right? But again, breaks are going to be intentional. That's the love that you build in for yourself, okay? So we are trying to find out what's nudging us to still complete those commitments to ourselves, what keeps us disciplined, okay? Because motivation is fleeting and it's based on how well or how good we feel. And we're not always going to feel well and we're not always going to feel good, okay? But we're always going to need to be committed, all right? Um, Sometimes life stress is just making it difficult, okay? Make it difficult to live in line with our values. Maybe there's temptations, maybe there's external pulls, right? And pushes. Because when difficult things are happening, it's very normal to lose touch with our values as we're trying to deal with those different situations, as we're trying to deal with anxiety, frustration, stress. So I don't want anybody to see those things as a sign of weakness or a sign of failure, because those are times that we can't judge ourselves if we notice that's what's happening in our lives, right? We just have to understand that we have the opportunity to course correct and we have to decide that we want to do that. What tools do we need to do that? How do we get back to our center? How do we ground to our foundation again? So never see it as a sign of weakness or a sign of failure. Failure in a way that means it's not a learning opportunity. Okay. Because I always say failure is an opportunity to learn and to course correct. So we don't need to judge ourselves if we notice this happening in our lives. It's something that's very normal. You're not alone in doing it, even though you may feel like you're the only person going through it, right? It's just because those people aren't standing by you, next to you, in a room with you, maybe even expressing those same things. You could be meeting people every day, but they're just not expressing that, you know? So it's very normal, right? But just remember that every current moment is our opportunity to reconnect with personal values, and there's no such thing as it being too late to do that. Okay, it's never too late to course correct, adjust our course, reconnect, and realign. Okay, whether we're 1 degree in or out of alignment, it is affecting our final goals, the direction that we want our lives to go in. All right, so at any time we realize that we're off course, we can get back on. All right. Whatever it is that we're doing, it's going to make it closer or farther away from our destination. Even when we're doing nothing, like if we're just ignoring things, right? It doesn't mean that we're still not moving in a direction, that our lives are still not ongoing. Okay. So when we talk about things like that and in that way, it's about valued living, is what we call it. And valued living guides our awareness in respect to what we're doing that's helpful and values that we're holding that's not helpful. Okay. And it does not contribute to cultivating resilience. It doesn't build us up in that way. So I like to go more in depth in the 6-week coaching series about it. But when you're thinking about your values and analyzing your reasons for engaging in value driven behavior, it's important to be honest and allow yourself to be vulnerable, because that's actually where your strength is, okay? Being vulnerable. We often think that being vulnerable is a weakness, but it's not. It's that self-awareness And being able to recognize that and connect with that helps you to make intentional decisions and make a plan for your life and stick with that plan for your life. That's the thing that's your foundation is what's going to keep you believing in your goals when nobody else wants to support, can support, or believes that they should support them, right? It's also going to be the thing that allows you to be accountable to the changes, the adjustments, the redirection, right? When you need to pivot and things of that sort. That's part of our awareness and it's connected to our foundation, okay? Foundation are the core values. Now, I put a couple of examples here on the slide or whatever. But last week, I did introduce the concept of core values and explain that they're principles guiding our behavior and our decisions, right? So core values shape our sense of purpose and really influences our peace of mind. Whenever we're feeling off-center, it's usually because something in our lives are misaligned with our values, right? In the discipline of positive psychology, there's a term, it's called eudaimonic well-being, which is basically just a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from living in harmony with your values, regardless of what's going on externally, right? Self-fulfillment is coming from living in line with your core values. So our core values are the center of who we are, the foundation of who we are, and it's what keeps us grounded in our reality. So I like to use the example of being unemployed. Let's take a person who has a family, all right? And so they're motivated to bounce back despite whatever happened at the job, whatever was unfair. Maybe they got a pink slip, like they got laid off. So the reason for them being unemployed is not their own. It's not because they didn't do their job. It's not because they got fired, right? At the end of the day, they know that they want to be protected. They know that they want to take care of their family. They know that they want their family's well-being to be intact. And so their values of love and care, they're driven by that. And that's driving them to deal with the stress of losing their job, right? While continuing living in line with those values. Okay, well, I'm just going to try to find a different job. Maybe I need to find something right away. Maybe I need to manage the savings until I can get a job, to get back on track there. But their values that's the why. Okay. Why do I need to continue after this event happening in my life? Why do I need to stay focused? Why do I need to be aware of my emotions and manage them? Why do I need to have an outlet? Whatever the tools are to deal with the frustration and the stress of life that we're experiencing at that time. And however we deal with it in a way that doesn't stagnate us or make us feel like we're drowning in life. Okay. So by engaging in behavior that aligns with our values, then we cultivate this path of resilience from the stress. And stress is going to come. Again, that's something that's normal. Sometimes we feel like we are taking on an unfair amount of stress, right? Sometimes it's about us not having boundaries. Sometimes it's about trying to hang on to things that are misaligned with our values in our life too. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I just wanted to give a little bit more information about the eudaimonic, right? So eudaimonic, it's not something that's new. It's definitely something found in Greek writings. Aristotle, as a matter of fact, talked about it and noted eudaimonia, right? As a way to be noble. It was a noble goal in life, mainly because it represented this state of flourishing and living well and feeling well. And that feeling was coming from self-fulfillment. It was virtue oriented. So it was longer lasting, right? Versus hedonic, or what some people might refer to as hedonism. If you're in the circles of religion, you may have heard that before, and it's about those temporary pleasures. So one is being connected to our inner authenticity, okay, understanding the works of our subconscious, while the other is more about physical reality, material reality, the things that distract us, that give us pleasures, like maybe you have 10 cars you want to buy. After you buy those 10 cars, what do you have, right? What's going to be the new distraction? When I talk about this as far as like self-love, self-care, I talk about dealing with the trauma, um, identifying with your authentic self, turning inward, right? Versus going on vacation, going to the spa, going shopping. Nothing wrong with any of those latter things, right? But it doesn't make the other part go away. It doesn't fulfill the other part. It doesn't fill the inner work. All right. As a matter of fact, if we have some things that are out of balance, imbalanced with our like spending or how we make decisions or use of substances, we can usually connect that back to things that are being ignored in our inner world. Okay. So eudaimonic is a term that is used in positive psychology because it highlights the importance of meaning and the importance of purpose as the key to our true happiness. It's something that's sustaining. Okay. Um, who was it? What is his name? Let me tell you something. I cannot think of his name right now. Oh my gosh. Anyway, the actor that was in The Mask, Jim Carrey. I could not think of his name. Jim Carrey actually said something to that effect of, I wish everyone had all the money in the world that they could stand, right? Want it for nothing materially, because then they would understand that that's not happiness. It doesn't bring you true happiness, right? So if you're not all right with yourself, everything you touch is not going to be all right. Okay. You can kind of think of it that way. And most of us, that's what we're on a quest for, right? We're on a quest for this true happiness. We are looking for happiness in people, right? We often tell partners, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, you're not making me happy, right? But what they do today is not always going to make you happy. Maybe we don't know what actually makes us happy. It's because we haven't turned inward, right? To really take that moment to be vulnerable. Uh, we look for happiness in things. If I get this house, if I get this job, if I had this set of clothes, if I get this hair, if I, there's things that we feel I'm gonna feel good about my life and I'm gonna feel good about who I am if I have this thing. And if those things are taken away from us, then we don't have an identity. But our identity is not in those things, right? Just like when they said, "Girl, you wearing that dress, right?" What did she say? It was in Players Club. Make the money, don't let the money make you, right? So it's about not letting these external things um, take a hold of your awareness and your emotions and flip you all kinds of ways. Okay. So um, we feel like, oh, I'm behind, or if this is not happening for me, then I don't have any worth. And those two things don't go together. You're already born worthy. Okay. It's not something that you need to earn. So the world has us thinking that these things, these external things, they all need to be grabbed, right? Before we can have any worth, before we can feel good, before we can think that we matter. And that's just actually not true. Now, um, those type of pursuits and those material things, those external things, those are things that are classified as hedonic, okay? Because we're focused on that pleasure. We just want there to be an absence of negativity or negative experience and negative emotions, okay? But what helps us to stay balanced and be able to manage through those challenges are the meaning in our lives, the self-realization that we have, that actualization that we're able to grab a hold of. And that only comes from going within. But that doesn't mean that those things aren't important, right? We do not like to be bored, right? So things keep us distracted, sometimes distracting us from the things that we need to pay the most attention to. Sometimes it has us just living for today, right? Saw a billionaire, and he was given an interview in Los Angeles, but on Skid Row, and he was just saying how he was at one time a billionaire, but he was living for that for that moment. And whatever he was searching for, he still did not find by having access to all of that money. So when we live for today, we don't have a care for the impact, right, that it has for us tomorrow or for that next day. Maybe we're focused on travel, maybe we're focused on events, maybe we're focused on spas, but those things do provide temporary relief. Now, there is a study out there if you're interested into looking into this a little bit more. Maybe I'll do a video on it, but it's by Veronica Huta, Huta, and Richard Ryan. It's called Pursuing Pleasure or Virtue. And if you don't want to read the 29 pages or you don't want to read the abstract, it's just basically saying that there's a balance of these two things, right? The people who reported being the most fulfilled actually experienced both things in a balance that worked for them. Let me put it like that, because it's not like this formula for it's not a one size fits all, okay? But there was a balance for them and having access to those things. But just having those material things, those external things, didn't make people feel self-fulfilled. And sometimes we're having discomfort, right? We're getting pushed out of our comfort zone, not realizing that it's a time for growth. Like it's pushing us to do that. So even though it feels undesirable, it's not a bad thing, right? Um, we could talk about being in an energetic flow. The movie Soul kind of illustrated that a little bit. It's an animated movie. I want to say it's by Pixar, Disney. I'm not sure, but it's an animated movie. It talks about, being in the flow. And sometimes a person has a job and they have that job. It aligns with them and their core values. It aligns with their why in life. And so they feel fulfilled and they feel built up when they're doing that job instead of being a position of can't wait till I go on break, hating to wake up for the day to do the work that they do. There's a big difference in that, right? So there's a difference in living by your values, even when you have a job, right? And then being misaligned with your values. You're not feeling connected in a way. You're out of that flow. So a lot of people don't realize that being out of the flow, before things can really happen in a solidified way for you materially, there's a lot of things that happen energetically. I'm pausing this to decide if I'm going to talk about that, but we won't go into that. Let's try to. I'll keep it focused and short. But if we're able to do something that we can get lost in, that's something that's fulfillment. Okay, it's not short-term gratification. It's something I've had that experience before too. I was trying to think of an example, but I mean that's the best example I have. Is definitely going to work. Because a lot of people hate to go to work, but a lot of people find fulfillment, and that's what people differentiate between a career and a job. Okay, because a career is something you want to do for a lifetime. All right, but check out that study if you have time. So what words are describing our core? Last week I asked people to choose a few words to for their core identity, right? We were checking in on the whole, and this is more about those core values being part of your core identity. So today we're actually going to pin that down a little bit more. I want people to be able to establish their center and start thinking about that this week. If you're not looking at the chat, then go ahead and scroll all the way up because there should be a PDF posted there. It's about core values. Take a moment to look over that if you can. Now, our foundation, it definitely matters more than anything because sometimes the big bad wolf is going to come in and it's definitely going to blow your house down. Okay. But when you have a sturdy foundation, then that is what allows us to rebuild to start again. So if our foundation is wobbly and we don't have one built, it's a little bit, shaky, then everything that we're built on is going to be sketchy. It's going to be hard to rebuild. It's going to be hard to quote unquote bounce back. It's going to be hard to persevere through challenges, right? It's going to be hard to say, okay, I have these skills to endure because there's some things that we have to endure in order to overcome. Okay. It's just the process that we're going through. Again, that discomfort in that building is that growth. We have these growing pains. Okay, I want to also try to find this for everybody who's not in the chat or can't access it for whatever reason. Let me see if I could share this PDF really quick. Okay, so we have a couple of sections you see on the first page. There's this section about these are just core values that are being identified, and then there's some more on this second page here. Okay, just expanding from that slide that we had. All right, so we're gonna do a little thing. I want you to take a look at that PDF and I want you to circle the core values that you resonate with. I'm going to give you 1 minute to take a look at it. Circle the ones that jump out at you, as many as you want to. Okay, that's why I'm only going to give you 1 minute, that you don't have a lot of time to think about it. I just want it to be something that you feel like, okay, I connect with this or I don't connect with this. And if you connect with it, you are going to circle it. Okay, so I'm going to start that minute now. I don't think you guys are seeing it. Okay, there we go. If something that resonates with you is not there on the list, just write it in. When we have resilience, confidence, authenticity, perseverance, humor, accountability, open-mindedness, determination, acceptance, inclusion, transparency, gratitude, passion, self-reliance, safety, forgiveness, curiosity, patience. Okay, and our time is up. So now we're going to move into a discussion. I want to pause and reflect. And I want you guys to think of a time that you really felt like things was going good in life. Things were aligned, like you were, everything was flowing and not really forcing, or at least one area of your life was flowing. Things were going how you wanted them to go, how you think you planned them. Okay. And I want you to think about what values were present in that moment. All right. So look at that PDF again. If any of the values you circled were part of that experience, I want you to take note of that. Okay. If it's already circled, just place a box around it. If it's not circled, place a box around it. All right. If it's not on the sheet, like I said, write it in. Just write down what comes up when you're thinking about that moment of things going well and flowing well. Right. It doesn't have to be a full list. It could just be one thing noted. And just take notice if it was a value that you already circled and already identified. All right. Since everybody did introduce themselves, I do want to, I think we're going to leave the discussion open and not break out into rooms. All right. You can leave your camera off for sharing if you want to, but let's take a moment to discuss what values we're honoring. Okay. When we feel like we're in flow and when everything is going well, when we feel most like ourselves. All right. I'm going to pause the recording really quick. I didn't know where I had put my bar. Okay, so good discussion there. If we're noting, we're looking back in time, right? Reflecting on something. But consider how that value is speaking to you right now in your current season. Is it showing up at all? Are you connected to it at all? Have things changed? Is it something that's even still relevant for you? And you don't have to speak it out loud, but um, I'm asking you to reflect on that, right? Is it even a value that you want to reclaim? Is it something that you want to be more prominent in your life? Okay. Is there something different, a different value that's guiding you at this time? Okay. Do you no longer Like, I think I've outgrown that value. It's not really something that aligns for me. Okay. Think about that. I always choose something that I want people to take from the space and from the discussions. This week, I want you to leave with core identities that matter to you, right? Um, as you're living this week, as you're making decisions this week, going about your life, really consider how those values are either showing up in those decisions, right? Um, Note how they're playing a part in you living intentionally. Like, these are my goals, and I make these decisions, or I do these things, I participate in these things, I have these jobs because they align with who I am at the core. Okay. Or how, like I said, it plays a role in you making decisions. I want you to leave here knowing that you are indeed about something. Okay. That's what this week's core activities are about. You're about something. A lot of times we think that we're not about something, but that usually has something to do with either comparing ourselves. And when we're comparing ourselves to people, it's apples and oranges. It's just not going to be the same thing, right? Your purpose, my purpose is going to be different. Your vibe, my vibe is going to be different. And even though they can play beautiful music together, it is something that is very unique. That's why comparing ourselves is always, what you're going to be good at 10 may not be what I'm going to be good at 10. There may be different lessons in our lives that are going on, right? But at the end of the day, I'm still always the best me. Okay, I'm the best me in that moment. A lot of times when we're comparing ourselves, we think, oh, this person deserves grief, they deserve space, they deserve more love. Everybody's already born with that worth, already born with love. We are looking for the things that are disconnecting us, getting in the way, being the obstacle to connecting with that love, to connecting with that worth, to connecting with that value. Okay. It has nothing to do with earning it at all. Like it's already there. You come into the world as a complete individual. Okay. Along the way of living, things get cut off from us. That's why self-fulfillment is more about from within, connecting with our true authenticity. Okay. So if you're working with the PDF, there's some blank spaces on that first page. And I want you to use those spaces to narrow down your focus on 3 to 5 core values, right? It can be the ones that you circle. It can be you taking more time to think, okay, this is more what I'm aligned with. But be more intentional, give some thoughts, right? I rushed you into it today, but take this week, like I said, to see what's showing up in your decision making, to see what's showing up in how you treat people and how you expect people to treat you. What values are coming out with that? Okay. What values do you want to build more? What values do you want to show up more in your life? Right. So we're going to narrow those down to 3 to 5 core values. All right. And we are looking at those values to be the ones guiding us today. Okay. Or ones that we want to reconnect with. All right. Um, if you're not the journaling type, and I always suggest journaling, there's a reason for that. I probably need to do another video on journaling and the importance of it, especially when you're trying to make changes in your life and reconnect to certain things. But I do always suggest it, and I want this particular piece to be a living document for you with the core living. So you could use part 2 on the second page of that PDF to reflect on why those values are important, or how you feel they are enriching your life or will enrich your life as you go along your journey. Okay. And I want you to hold on to that. Fold it up, put it somewhere, put a timer in your phone, like a date in your phone that you want to go back and look at that and reevaluate, do some reflection. But today, take with you that you are about something. Okay. Even if you're not clear on your purpose, you have purpose. But I'm hoping that we get to that by the end of these few discussions here. So when you start honoring your compass, it may feel like you're disappointing people, okay? But what you're not doing is betraying yourself, okay? That's the quiet part about living your values. That's sometimes the discomfort in doing so as well, right? Maybe the folk you were aligned with before, when you were people pleasing, when you were taking the external feedback and you were trying to play to that instead of playing to who you are and what you feel comfortable with, that self-fulfillment. Now there's some friction there, and that's fine. Okay. There's nothing wrong with it. If we're living with intention, we want to be able to say yes. We want to be able to accept things with intention too within our lives, right? So when we're saying yes out of fear, and not intention, what are we exactly afraid of? That's a question we have to ask ourselves, because sometimes we can be afraid what someone else may be doing, or what they may not do, right? Because of how they feel about who we are and how we're living. We might be afraid that we're missing out on something that's meant for us, right? This is the person who came in, they're showing me love. If I'm going to be in alignment with my true values, it may not please them, right? And if it doesn't please them, then they may walk out of my life. At the same time, that person can be a placeholder and blocking you from what's meant to be in your life. Okay. So saying yes with intention is about understanding what your values are, what your foundation is, and inviting things in that build on that foundation, that support that foundation, that align with that foundation. Okay. So when we accept with intention, we live our lives in alignment. Okay. All right. And you're not going to miss out on anything because you're living your life in alignment. If anything, you are avoiding the things, okay, that are not in alignment, the people who are not in alignment with your core values. That's really the meaning of rejection being protection, right? And it goes the same with saying no with our no's and being firm about that, right? Having our boundaries. We often think that, oh, I got to explain why it's going to be no. Again, because it's going to be about people's feelings, and we want to consider those, right? But we can't manage them. Each of us have to manage our feelings, right? Sometimes those feelings can be a challenge, all right? A no means that something doesn't align with who we are, okay? Our core values, that's who we are at the center. So when we live those core values, people see that, okay? They feel the energy. And at the very least, they are observing the behavior patterns that are in alignment with our core values. And so they also know whether they align with that or they don't align with it. Okay. And what options do we have? Some people are going to try to pull you over to their side because they want you to align. Sometimes we're going to try to pull other people to our side because we want them to align, right? But for some reason, it's not. The vibe ain't vibing. We need it. We need to let it be that way. Okay. So people will still try you. Can you guys hear me now? Oh my gosh. I don't know what you guys did in here. Okay, so the intention, saying yes with intention, knowing that when we say yes to things that align for us, that we're not missing out on anything. Okay. Whatever's not in alignment is not in our flow. Those are things that are supposed to be missed. It's not a rejection. Okay. Whether rejection is protection, we talked about that. It's not a rejection. Okay. So when we're saying no as well, that's our clarity. We're saying no because it doesn't align. We're saying yes because it does align. We're being intentional about how we live, what we accept into our energy, what we carry with us, right? And so we're dealing with having the courage to live out loud, to live our authenticity, right? To be true to ourselves. Again, you're always going to be consistent when you're true to yourself. When we're talking about the people that you meet, the people in your family, the people that you love or have relationships with, that's the energy that either aligns or it misaligns. The jobs that you take, how you treat people in public, right? That's why they say you take somebody out to eat, how they treat the waiter is how they're going to treat, the chef is how they're going to treat the busboy is how they're going to, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter if you have money. It's not going to matter if you have status. How you greet and treat somebody, that's part of your core values. It's who you are at the core. You're not putting on a costume for anybody. Okay. But is it difficult to live that way sometimes? Yes, because everyone is not going to be in alignment. And so it feels like rejection, but it's not rejection. It's an opportunity to choose, right, what aligns. It's an opportunity to choose what aligns to stay in the flow. Okay. You've been in those bumper boats or whatever, and you bump somebody, you part ways, right? Everybody's still having fun in the water. Everyone's, but you're not attracted like a magnet. That's what I was just talking about when I realized that someone was saying you couldn't hear. The magnet, right? You have the polarizing, it just doesn't go. It doesn't go. But we'll stay and we'll try to force it because we want it to go. Why? Because we're feeling rejected. We're feeling less valued. We're feeling like we failed, right? So we have to make it work. But what we're doing is we're poisoning our efforts because we're holding cargo that doesn't belong. It's sinking us, right? It's not, it has no purpose on our journey. Okay. So let's close with an affirmation. I trust the wisdom of my inner compass being your inner truth, your intuition. Okay. And I steer my life with love, courage, and truth. Love is something that we're born with. They're just things that are, blocking us from it, cutting off our vision from it, interfering with it, right? Like I think I talked about that here in these discussions, but like tuning into a radio, something is getting in the way of the signal. We got to figure out what that is. That's how we fix that flow. Okay. So that's the affirmation I want you guys to leave with today. And again, think about your core values this week. I always tell people that, change is uncomfortable. So don't feel discouraged when it creeps up. Okay. That's just that opportunity to practice choosing your truth. And each time that you choose it, it gets easier and easier. You'll find that you will gain peace of mind doing so. Okay. The truth of you is always going to be enough. You were already born enough. You were already born worthy. You were already born loved. Those things are not something that need to be earned. Okay. So you don't need to compromise those things to receive love. You don't need to compromise those things to receive acceptance. You don't need to compromise those things to have peace of mind and be well, right? It's actually doing the exact opposite for you. All right. So next week, we're going to talk about the cells, which is going to be the energy and desire that help us move forward. But for now, keep your compass close. Okay. Check in with it this week. I'm gonna stop the recording, but I'll hang in for a moment for any questions and whatever I could not hear, because I noticed that was going on in the chat. If you're watching the replay recording, definitely feel free to reach out to me on social media, Shay Toston, SheaToston, and that's T like Tom, by the way. You can also join the Facebook group, Take the Leap. We're talking about archetypes and fear archetypes as well, and how to use those to grow and achieve personal development, right? Doing it while you're scared. Okay, so we're talking about that. Or you could join Shay's Pretty Skinny.passion.io. All right, so we'll see you guys next week for the sales conversation. Let's see here.